Hello everyone, it's Jessica and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about the bell siphon, which I mentioned really briefly in my previous video. There are three main topics I want to cover in this video. First is what is an automatic bell siphon? Second, how does it work? And third, how can you fix one that isn't working? These three topics will be divided up into sections and time-stamped down below in the comment section in case you want to skip to a specific part. Without further ado, let's get started. An automatic bell siphon is a device that consists of a media guard, a bell, a standpipe, and a draining system or tailpiece. It is used in aquaponics to regulate the flow of water in a constant and continuous way that doesn't require any human help. A bell siphon controls the maximum and minimum amount of water through flooding and draining, ensuring that the plant roots are always allowed to have enough of both to grow properly. First, water from the fish tank is transported up to the grow bed via a water pump. As the grow bed starts to be filled, the surface of the water is equally exposed to the atmospheric pressure because the grow bed has an open top and the pipe inside the bell siphon is empty. However, the water reaches a point where it forms a seal inside the bell siphon, closing off its connection to the atmospheric pressure. That makes the water fall through the pipe and creates a vacuum inside the bell siphon, drawing out more and more water. Finally, when the water level in the grow bed falls below the slits at the bottom of the siphon bell, oxygen is allowed back in, breaking the siphon and stopping the draining of water. The pressure inside the bell siphon returns to atmospheric and the process is repeated. In this video's final section, I'm going to go over my experimentation process and the conclusions I came up with. This includes the two possible reasons why a bell siphon won't work and the different solutions that can fix them. Since I found it pretty difficult to understand how a bell siphon worked by looking at the opaque one I usually use in my aquaponics system, I made a clear version for this demonstration. Before I start, it is important to first recognize what a working or non-working bell siphon looks like, and also identify what the possible issue is. As you can see here, this is an example of a working bell siphon, and what's important to note is as the jar is being filled up, there should be no draining. Only when the water reaches the top of the standpipe should water start to flow out. If your bell siphon does not work properly like this one, the next step is to identify what issue it has. There are two possibilities. The first is that it won't start, and the second is that it won't finish. I wanted to try to solve these two problems through my experiments, so I had to create two base models for each issue and list out the changeable variables, which were the use of an adapter, different levels of water flow, and different tailpieces. For the first part of my experiment, I wanted to address the starting issue, which occurs when water is not pulled out quickly enough because there's too little of it, and see how changing the variables I mentioned before could help it. To do this, I first made a base model with the following conditions: medium water flow and a 90-degree tailpiece, so that it had trouble starting. I did 10 trials and found that my bell siphon only worked 50% of the time, and failed in starting the other 50%. My hypothesis for this one was that the adapter would help because it would jostle around the water, therefore preventing a tunnel of oxygen from being formed and trapped inside the pipe. And after 10 trials, I found that I was correct. My bell siphon worked 100% of the time, a 50% improvement. Next, I tried increasing water flow for my base model. Again, after 10 trials, I saw an improvement. The higher water flow increased the 50% success rate to an 80% success rate. Finally, I changed the tailpiece by adding an additional horizontal pipe. This would help water build up by increasing the time it took to flow out. This change made my bell siphon work 100% of the time. For the second part of my experiment, I wanted to address the finishing issue, which is caused by atmospheric pressure and oxygen not returning to the bell siphon because of high water levels. I wanted to see if I could fix this by changing the different variables I mentioned before. To do this, I made a new base model with different conditions: high water flow and a tailpiece of a 90-degree elbow, a horizontal piece, so that it had trouble finishing. I completed 10 trials and found that my bell siphon only worked 60% of the time. I lowered the water flow so that there was more time for oxygen to enter back into the bell siphon. After 10 trials, this change had created a 100% success rate. The other experiment I did was replace the 90-degree elbow with a 45-degree elbow so water could flow out faster, giving oxygen more time to be let back in. Like the first one, after 10 trials, I found that this also had a 100% success rate. Those were all of my experiments, and to conclude or end this video, I really want to stress that there's a very fine balance required in order for your bell siphon to work. Too little water and your siphon may not start. Too much water and it may not finish. I would definitely recommend playing around with your different parts and seeing what works best for you. The only general rule I have is making sure that your bell siphon can work repeatedly and consistently perform correctly. I hope this helped. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to see more videos from me in the future. Bye!